Hello, and welcome back to plantcare.club, where we care about your plants. My name is Fred, and on this show, we will answer your plant questions and talk about plants like we're doing today. If you have any questions, go to plantcare.club. You can submit one there, or you could put it into the comments wherever you're watching, and we will get to it in the future. My background is I'm the co-owner of a greenhouse in Ontario, as well as a nursery in Homestead, Florida. We grow poinsettias, annuals, garden mums, palms, ferns, mandevilla, everything in between, and send them across Ontario. So the goal of the show is to take the information that we have at the nursery or the greenhouse level and show you how you can apply that to the plants at your own home. Now, today, we're going through, so over the last little bit, we've been going through specific types of plants. This time, we're going to talk about cordyline in general, and I have Cordyline Fruticosa here that we will go over today. Talk about this a little bit more specifically. Now, once you get to cordyline, it's interesting because the further south you get, these start to become landscape plants. A lot of northern plant enthusiasts are going to see these mainly in their own home, but then the further north you get, the more and more and more you start to see that these are outside and in people's, they'll be growing along the side of the street or in someone's garden bed or something like that. So the great thing about cordyline is it gives you the structure of straight up and down. It can continue to thrive and do really well all the way, as long as it's given the right nutrients, it'll do very well. Continue to go straight up. And it's overall a really great plant to show off as the center or to give a little bit of different height in your garden bed. And oh, the other thing is the color. The color always pops. That's usually what customers ask me about is, hey, we want something that can give that kind of bright theme. We have a customer in Canada that will always ask for cordyline because it has that pink in it, and he'll put them right by the road near the garden center or the nursery that he has there to bring in customers, because as they're driving by, they see these kind of bright colors. The bright colors usually bring people in. So that's my background on it really quickly. But let's start the same way that we do with everything else. When a cordyline arrives at the greenhouse or at the nursery, what are you going to do? How does it show up? What's it look like? So usually these will show up at the greenhouse. I've seen them show up at the nursery as well, but it's a little bit less common that they show up just as cuttings. They could be calloused cuttings. Now, what a calloused cutting is just like you would take a regular cutting off of one of your plants at home. You see the growth point, you snip off the growth point, now you have like a stem and it's got 4 or 5 leaves coming off the side of it. Great. A calloused cutting is you take that and you, through a process of either putting it in some water or leaving it out in the air and just trying to get a lot more the end of it exposed, it'll begin to harden and it starts to almost look like it's creating warts on the side of it. Now that is what you want just before that plant is going to start to root out. So callus cuttings will cost more than just a regular cutting. With a regular cutting, the farm can snip it off and ship it to you right away. And with a callus, it takes a little bit more time. There's a bit of a process in there, and through that whole process, it might take a week or 2 weeks just to get the callus little nubs on the very bottom of the cutting, which just means that it's going to be faster for the grower when it shows up. So let's say you just got in a calloused cordyline cutting into the greenhouse, which is going to be a little bit faster, or you got a regular one. You're going to plunk that into some soil. Now, usually I give the example of a 1 inch by 1 inch like cube, but with cordyline, you're probably going to want to do something a little bit bigger. You're going to want to give it a bit more space because they always come in with all of these extra leaves on them. It's hard to send a cordyline as a very small cutting. When you have a mandevilla or calibrachoas or any of those, a lot of the annuals, you can send really tiny, like 2 inch tall cuttings. But with cordyline, they have to be 3-4 inches long. Yeah, you know what, 6, 8 inches long basically from the bottom of it all the way to the top of the leaf. So because of that, you need to give it some more space so that air can still flow through. It's not going to get all cramped up. Typically, you're going to want to increase the humidity and you don't want to give them too much water. They can be very susceptible at that time to root rot. So you want to root them out in an environment where the soil is wet, but you're not watering them continuously every day. You want to give them some humidity, some fog, or a little bit of mist. Maybe put them in a chamber. That way, the humidity is a little bit higher. They can get everything that they need from the air while they begin to work on their roots. Now, if you can imagine, you have 50 of these cuttings all in one tray, and they don't have enough space. The leaves touching each other and the lack of airflow plus a bunch of water is going to be the perfect recipe for extra rot, issues at the actual stem of the plant, mold growing on the soil because the soil isn't being there's no sunlight that's reaching the soil. All of those little issues are going to start to crop up there because the plant because you can't get enough airflow through that spot. So they're tricky to begin to root in that sense. Some growers will go directly into their finishing pot. So I have seen them go straight from the cutting or the callus cutting directly into a 10-inch blow mold pot with, you got dirt all the way through it. They stick 3 of them straight in there and they root them out from that spot. In that way, if you don't have the right environment for them, they can get a little bit of rot. You might have some losses, and if you do get those losses, then you have to pay someone to go through again, clean that lost area out, put a new plant in the right spot. It becomes a little bit more challenging and expensive in that way. But I'm just outlining kind of both ways that growers begin to get the roots on these plants. So now let's say you're starting to see some roots. If you've rooted them in some smaller cells, you're going to plant that into your larger pot. And now they're in your 10-inch pot or a 6-inch or whatever you're looking for. Usually the smaller varieties are going to be planted into the 6-inch and they stay a little bit more compact. The bigger varieties, whether it's for landscape or it's for a garden center or grocery chain, they're going to be in a 10-inch pot, a bit bigger. So from that point, they are relatively straightforward, and you got to give them some fertilizer, lots of heat, and a bit of sunlight. Same as many tropicals, where they're going to want morning sun. They don't want direct sun all day long. They're going to want some of that morning sun instead. So you're going to have them placed in a spot in your house that mimics that. And the grower might use them once they're to a certain height. Then there's a wide array of where they're actually used. So sometimes they're used by growers to put them into patio pots. So they take them, they put them into the center of, let's say, a 20-inch patio pot. You put a 10-inch in there, a 10-inch cordyline. That's going to say you want it to shoot to get 18, 24 inches tall. And then you have all of your annuals around it. So that's one option. The next option is that goes straight to the garden center or the grocery store or whatever it's looking for, or wherever it's supposed to go from there. And the last option, it could just go straight to a landscaper. And they're going into different landscaping use cases across, garden beds or at an office or something like that. So when you are using these, the most common issue that I think people run into, especially as they're growing outside of the bottom leaves, I would say are spider mites. The spider mites can be so attracted to cordyline. It's like candy to them. They really get into the center of the growth points, right there into the base, and every year it seems that cordyline is one of the most attractive plants to spider mites. So if you start to see some issues, you always want to check the ends of the leaves. Usually the leaf comes out, and then at the very end of it, it's got like a little curl, a little tiny curl there. Check it right at the very end of that curl. If you see some webbing and little bugs that are walking across there, most likely you have spider mites. Then you have to go check out one of our other shows where we talk about different ways of managing these pests. Most likely chemical is the best way to go. The problem that you will run into is because spider mites are so common with cordyline, growers begin to treat for spider mites early, and they'll spray for them, and they'll clean them, and they'll clean them, and they get cleaned so many times at a nursery that by the time they get into your own home, they might be resistant to a lot of the chemicals that are available to you. So you might have to use a heavier dose than is suggested on the side of the bottle. You might have to use some different, some crazy ideas or something else that you see online to try to get rid of these. If you run into that situation, send us a message, send me a message, and I can do my best to give you a hand with this because I know how pesky they can be, and it's so hard to make them go away. Okay, now let's say you just purchased your cordyline from the garden center or from the grocery store, got back to your house. You've set it into somewhere that it gets enough sunlight, and I am going to assume that it is in your house because if it's outside in the garden bed, you're going to take care of a lot of the spider mites because you have all these outdoor predators that can eat the spider mites. So you don't have to apply as many chemicals most likely because you have natural predators on the mites that will keep that mite population a little bit down. So I'm assuming that the plant is inside of your house. How do you best take care of it? You're going to want to give it some fertilizer once a month at least, especially during the spring and the summer. During the fall months and the winter, that's when the plant starts to become a little bit more sleepy, and you don't have to give it as much fertilizer then. Maybe not at all. You're probably going to start to see some of those bottom leaves falling off. And when you look at pictures of them, for example, as I scroll down here, you can see different pictures of the bottom leaves don't exist on these plants or they're not there anymore. And this is just an example of growers that have had to clean these off because of most likely not enough water or some kind of a nutrient deficiency at some point. So here's a really good example of all the way up this stem, you've got a ton of bottom leaves that aren't there. Now, a cordyline, in theory, could grow to 5 feet tall and keep all the leaves all the way up. But the key is that plant needs to have enough nutrients, enough soil, and everything needs to be balanced out so that it says, okay, I have enough of all of my inputs to justify having all of these leaves. But if it doesn't have enough of one of those inputs, if it doesn't have enough fertilizer or soil or it misses a watering once or twice, like it can be that simple. It says, I don't have enough of these, therefore I don't need all my leaves, and I'm going to get rid of the bottom leaves first. So common that they drop the bottom leaves, or the leaves start to go brown or yellow at the very end of the tip. And for a grower, for someone selling the plant, they need to strip those leaves off because if not, they just start to they look too ugly, and the customer doesn't want to buy the plant because they say, I see that these yellow and brown leaves kind of scare me. I don't want to touch it. So, long way of me saying it is possible that they can have all of their leaves, but it's most likely they're going to drop them. And if you see that, don't be alarmed. It's very normal. The other thing is, in most 10-inch pots, you're going to have somewhere between 2 or 3 cordyline plants in there in order to really give it the right shape and to fill it out. Well, when you have that kind of competition with all 3 plants, the middle of the pot, as those plants get bigger, becomes a lot more shaded. And then the plant thinks, I don't need these leaves because they're not bringing in as much nutrients and sunlight for me. I need the outside leaves. I don't need the leaves in the middle. So they might drop those ones. So when you see this, don't get surprised, don't get startled or discouraged by it. It's incredibly normal. It's very, very, very normal. The fertilizer is definitely going to assist you in it, and it's going to keep those leaves on as long as possible. Outside of yellow and brown leaves, I don't see too many other issues with the cordyline. Yeah, so yellow and brown leaves and spider mites. Outside of that, it's relatively straightforward. Their root systems usually go to the bottom of the pot. They don't usually shoot all the way up to the top. So if you are going to switch up soil, you know what? I would suggest a little bit of a heavier soil. If you're going to go from, let's say, a 10-inch pot into a 12-inch, or you're putting these into your garden bed, then consider putting them into a little bit of a heavier soil because the root systems can be pretty strong. If you get all the way down there, you pull your plant out, the roots can come out maybe a half-inch thick. They can be strong, forceful roots that can push through some heavy soil. So I wouldn't be concerned about using some more dense soil in that way to hold on to moisture. That way you might not have to water as often. Now, the last piece of advice maybe that I can suggest is in the summer, if you have enough, if the temperatures are right and you have the ability to, try taking the cordyline that's inside and move it outside into a shaded area first, then maybe into a spot where it gets some morning sun or some afternoon sun, something like that. But setting it outside on a deck or a patio is going to help the plant manage its spider mites. It's going to give it a nice rinse off whenever it rains. It goes directly onto the pot. That's perfect. All over the plant. That's perfect. And it'll probably make the plant a little bit happier to be out in the elements, kind of back to where it was in the nursery days. And it gives it a little bit more spunk and life through the spring and the summer. Once it gets to the fall, obviously move it back in. But the spider mite comment might be the most important one there of moving it outside. Mites really hate water. They don't like to be wet. So if you're managing those mites, one of the best things you can do is have a rain all over the plant and get the tip from the top all the way down to the bottom wet. That makes them retreat, go right back into the center, helps you begin to manage them. I think I've rambled on enough about Cordyline for today. If you have any questions, plantcare.club or put it into the comment section here. Thanks, guys. Talk to you again soon.